Hello and welcome to the Store Central Football Show. This is Aman Kidwai, joined by Graham Chamberlain. This is the first of what we hope will be many video streaming and podcast shows that will be coming to you across the course of this football season. What an exciting one it is for 2025, heading into the season for the UConn Huskies. Jim Mora and his squad coming off a 9-4 campaign and a win over North Carolina. We talked about that, Graham, in our last podcast, and we talked about some of the position groups at length. Now we're getting closer to the season. I want to just start by, the standard opening question. How are the vibes? How are you feeling? What is your general positivity level heading into this? We're about at the start of football season.
I'd say I'm mostly positive. I have been around long enough to not get too excited because, inevitably something seems to have happened in the past. No back-to-back winning seasons since, 2010 Fiesta Bowl years, right? Today was moving day up in stores, and I think majority of those kids are probably 3-ish. When that happened, right? So it's been a minute. So we should be feeling positive about this, right? I've never gotten too excited, feeling too positive coming into the season because, being around for so long, it's hard to put a lot of stock into the positive vibes coming into the season because we've heard them all before. But, the logical side of me says, yeah, be excited, be positive about this team. We're coming off a 9-win season. We're going to get into it. The schedule is very manageable. Some of the biggest players come back. They lose a lot, but they also got a lot. So I feel pretty positive about the season. I really do. The fan in me is kind of vibeless because I just don't want to get too
by the hope monster. No, that's totally understandable. I think there's quite a bit of that sentiment across the fan base that's saying, I have every reason to feel positive, but just don't want to get too high. I think Mora year 2 might be an example of some times where the preseason fervor got quite high. Edsel year 1, that everyone felt fairly good about that offseason. Diaco year 3, there was some hype for that. Just off the top of my head, some years where you were starting to get kind of frothy in August about what might happen. But I totally agree in the idea that there is the most sensible set of reasons to be optimistic about another 9-win season or something near that. Just a good, solid team, right? Something to be proud of that's entertaining to go to and watch on Saturdays, right? Which is kind of that baseline thing we kind of were missing for some time. Like you said, transfer recruiting went well. They won 9 games. I mean, they hadn't done that in a really, really long time, and kept plenty of talent, brought in enough. And yeah, let's get into the schedule here. I mean, you've been breaking down each opponent individually on storecentral.com, a website everyone should go check out. That's where you will get the most in-depth preview coverage of UConn football available. I am positive of that. We'll talk about the schedule in a few different ways. Maybe the first thing to do would be to let's break it down into some tiers. There are 12 games, of course, and I would say there's maybe 3 categories. There's games they should win, which that's a nice feeling to have a chunk there. Not just like 1 or 2. There's really a chunk of games they should win. There's some games that will be close, which again, also good, also a good thing to have. And then there are maybe 1 or 2 games that I'm expecting to maybe not be so close, but anything can happen. But that's about where I'm at right now. I feel like there's about 3 tiers. We could start filling them in now. Graham, how do you feel?
I agree. I think you got 3 tiers. You've got your absolutely should win, need to win. You got your toss-ups, and you've got your probably not. But I will say the probably not. I could be convinced, or I could at least give a scenario where it's like, actually they could win this game. Like, those games are not impossible. There are no impossible games on the schedule, right? So that's great, right? Initially, the schedule had Ohio State. That would be an impossible, right? Syracuse and Ohio State are not anywhere near each other. But let's start with the ones that they should, right? Obviously, the opener against Central. They took care of business last year against Merrimack. I don't know if they do that again this year, only because we're breaking in so many players. I don't know if you expect to see 63 points put up, but it's a game that they should win.
With Joe Fagnano, anything is possible.
This is true, and we saw that with
team.
Merrimack. He did whatever it is that he really wanted to do out there in that game. I would say Ball State is going to be another one, just a team that is just really struggling, and just they got a lot of work to do over there in Muncie, Indiana. After that, I think FIU is one that they should, even though I think, especially as I was doing the preview, I was like, it could be a little tougher than I thought. But, spoiler alert, if you haven't read it, I ultimately did pick UConn to win. That is one that I think they should do. You got Rice that they should win, even though it's a road game. You're flying halfway across the country. They have a brand new offense they're installing. I just see it taking at least a year to get really comfortable and to have who they need, the personnel, to run that offense. But it will be an interesting wrinkle. It's not going to look anything like last year or the year before when they go play Rice. After that, UAB, yes, you should. I hate to be disrespectful in general, but I will bet against Trent Dilfer most of the time. I will. Sorry, Trent. I will do that. I think that's really it. After that, I think there's some toss-ups. You may notice I didn't say Delaware. I think Delaware will be a challenge. Road games are always a challenge to start off with, number one. Number two, they have a pretty solid fan base down there. It'll be a good crowd for their, it'll be probably at least a Rensselaer-sized crowd in Newark. It's a team that went 9-2 last year in the FCS, would most likely have been in the playoffs had they been eligible, but they weren't because they're transitioning from FCS to FBS. Just a team that is a very solid FCS team year in, year out. They've been recruiting for this. The difference is that, you always run into depth issues when you're kind of transitioning up, but their starters, I'm sure, are on par with many of their G5 peers, and they'll probably be better than a lot of Conference USA teams, to be quite frank. I'd say, another road game, Buffalo, will be tough. It should have been tough last year. I think that game was just an anomaly, especially when you look at how the rest of each team's seasons went, right? Yeah, that was just, and maybe you could blame it all on Buffalo, waltzing through UConn's pregame warmups and, them jawing back and forth. And maybe that, was enough motivation for the Huskies that who knows? But, I don't think they're really 44 points apart from each other. You play that game 10 times, right? So it'll be tough. And it's going to be tough too when you go to Buffalo. Hard to generate energy and juice. Like, it's just a juiceless place. It's a weird, funky kind of a Rector set looking stadium, and it's usually pretty empty. So that'll be a challenge. I think that Air Force always presents a challenge. Anytime you're playing a service academy, that's
for sure
a really difficult game. They won their last 4 down the stretch last year. They started off real bad. Really turned it on. That's a program like Army and Navy. They can't utilize the transfer portal. So they really have to rely on guys developing and stepping up. And for them, unfortunately, they had a really senior-laden team in 23 that a lot of them left. So you needed guys to step up and progress, and they did end of the year. So I think that continues on this year. Then you got Florida Atlantic, and Cam Fancher is gone. He's starting for UCF. I don't know how this continues to happen.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I just.
He must be amazing in practice, right?
Yeah.
He must just be so good in practice. Cam Fancher.
What you people all saw last year on September, what was it? I don't remember. September something in East Hartford. That's Cam Fancher. I promise you. I promise you that's him. But
and the bowl game against Marshall.
And that too. Go back to Myrtle Beach. That's him.
That's right.
He's gone. They have Caden Veldkamp, who's great. He's from Western Kentucky. If you follow college football, you know Western Kentucky just puts up yards. They just put up points. So that offense should be considerably better than what you saw last year from Florida Atlantic. I think, it's the last game of the year, so it's hard to really make predictions because anything can happen between now and November. But I think, they'll be better end of the year. I think that'll be a tight game. As for the ones that I don't think they win, I mean, there's 3 left, right? You got Syracuse, you got BC, you got Duke. Interestingly, of the 3, I say if they have any chance, it's Syracuse. And the reason I say this is because it's week 2. If there's any time you want to get Syracuse, it's week 2 with a new quarterback, largely new receiver group, right? You've got a running back who played last year as a true freshman, Yassine Willis, but not like a starter. Like, they don't have like LaQuint Allen like they used to. There's a lot of new players across the board. Their head coach, Fran Brown's a tremendous recruiter, but, can he put together another team like last year? That's tough. I wouldn't expect to see the number 1 passing offense again like you saw last year, but they'll be working things in, and they'll be coming off a game against Tennessee in the opener that I don't think is going to go very well for them. That's a really tough break-in game for a lot of guys. So, obviously UConn's breaking in guys too, but I'd rather get Syracuse on September 6th than I would November 6th. BC, I think, is just always a tough matchup. Just a really tough matchup. I don't think they're anything spectacular. I don't think they're going to be like top of the ACC or anything, but it's always a really, they're strong on the lines. They're strong in the run game. I think they've improved their quarterback with Dylan Lonergan, from Alabama. And just, defensively, always tough. Bill O'Brien, I think, is a good coach. So that'll be a really tough game. And Duke, similar deal. I don't know that I'm buying as much Duke hype as what's out there. Darian Mensah is a great quarterback. They're paying him an awful lot of money to be a great quarterback. A lot of other guys return for Duke, but, I just don't see how they, really explode on offense. I'm not seeing it. Nevertheless, Chandler Rivers is back in the secondary. It's just a really good team. And I'm just not seeing it happening. If I had to rank the 3, I'd probably go Syracuse, BC, Duke in order of winnable games.
Interesting. I think most people might imagine that Duke is probably the best team on the schedule going into the season. Sounds like you're projecting maybe Syracuse. I mean, it's just a tough matchup and situation, like you're saying, and the timing. But I think seems like all the metrics and such have Duke highest so far. And I mean, the Mensa hype. It's Duke. Freaking Duke got, for the second year in a row, or for the second time in 3 years, a very desirable transfer quarterback, which is. And there are, Manny Diaz, people have maybe mixed opinions about him, but he's done fairly well at Duke. And he inherited a good situation from a guy who got hired away from Texas A&M. I basically agree with your tiering. I think, people might be surprised to have Delaware and Buffalo in the maybe pile, but I completely agree. Delaware, not to, we might be looking at a James Madison situation with Delaware, where it's not a very difficult adjustment to FBS because they have the support, they have the culture, they had good enough players, and they can fill the scholarship limit. We again dropped an article recently on StoreCentral.com from our historian Clayton Truder on the history of the matchup. Delaware, spoiler alert, has a pretty strong history in the matchup of winning most of those games, but I do think UConn will probably be favored going into that, at least, unless something like really crazy happens the first few weeks. But I look for Delaware to be a solid CUSA team. I think it's a great series for UConn to have. But yeah, I totally agree that it's in the maybe pile. For Buffalo, yeah, road trip, Taquan Roberson, definitely a better team than last year's score would indicate. Again, well coached. Pete Lembo. People are liking what they're seeing out of that. The Bulls are a MAC favorite for many people, for whatever that's worth. It certainly doesn't mean that you can chalk it up as a dub for this UConn team, on the road for sure. Boston College, yeah, you have to hand it to them. Bill O'Brien, also a good hire, and he's brought you. He's had that history of being the quarterback guy. I'm not so sure how warranted that is, but he's definitely worked with a lot of high level quarterbacks or highly recruited quarterbacks, and that seems to be the case again here with the Alabama transfer. They were good. I mean, they were good last year. Good by Northeast football standards. They were good, and so yeah, that'll be a tough game on the road. So I agree with all of your inclusions. I guess the one thing I would say is I do think at FAU, yeah, I'm optimistic that that's like, maybe like a 3-7 or something FAU team, and UConn is maybe playing for positioning or for attractiveness as a bowl team, to hit a good win total or what have you. So I am counting a little bit on that. I do think UConn actually might even be a more experienced team than FAU, which could be good. Yeah, that's probably the one that I would say I've put that in the go get that dub, pile, because I do think UConn should have a pretty good edge there. And yeah, Air Force, man, that's a hard team to project. But like you said, if in their cycle last year was the off year, then this year is going to be a year of improvement for them. They ended their season strong, and people expect them to be a pretty good team in the Mountain West this year. So, but yeah, it's a very gettable schedule. I think you can see, a satisfying number of wins for UConn fans. I'm sensing, like 7-8 is kind of the like average optimistic estimate. Lots of people saying, hey, 9-10 is possible. Um, I think 9-10 is really optimistic, but yeah, sure, it is possible. And it's definitely a gettable schedule. Do you feel like the sentiment, you read the boards, you're on the social medias, do you feel like the expectations from the fan base are at a reasonable place?
Eh. Eh. I mean, I I see what you're seeing, right? I see a lot of 9. I see a lot of 10. If you look at Jared Cutler's most recent or one of his recent posts, he asks people to project their schedule, and you see some 12-0s, and I'm sure I don't think they're that serious, right?
Yeah, just having fun.
There's a lot of 10-win things, and I think that's fair to think when you're looking at the trajectory of this program, right? They beat the bad teams last year. And so good progress would be you beat the bad teams again and you beat somebody you're not supposed to. Now, I don't think Buffalo is bad, nor do I think Delaware is bad, but it's all kind of relative in this world, right? The strength of schedule is pretty low. I've seen it in various places in the 120s. That probably makes sense. 10 would be a masterpiece. It'd be the most wins they've ever had. They've never had 10 wins at the FBS level. They've had 2 9-win regular seasons. Interestingly, the schedule that this one probably resembles most is 2003. The year before they joined the Big East, and they went 9-3. They beat their FCS opponent. They beat all the G5 teams. They lost to Virginia Tech. They lost to NC State, and they lost one more that I can't think of at the moment, which is embarrassing. But Boston College, at home. So that could happen again this season. Like I said at the outset, I do not get too hyped up. I look at things and I assume not the worst, but I don't assume the best. So I would absolutely love to be wrong. I'd love to go into Buffalo and to FAU and Delaware and just trounce them. Skylar Bell catches 200 yards, something. I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff out there. I would be very happy, and everyone can laugh at me. I do not care. But it's also nice to see fans have expectations that are at least in the ballpark. Like we're saying 7 to 8, and most people are saying at least 9. We're not far off from each other. We're in the ballpark. So I just hope that in terms of fan support, they see, okay, they can do this. This is the second year in a row now where they're winning games, and even though they're not the best teams, they're not really attractive teams, but they're winning, and that's a difference. You start to get more people coming out. It's really important for any potential conference realignment in this revenue sharing area. It's important just to get people to buy tickets, but I totally get when people say, I do not want to go watch Ball State and FIU. I get it, but these are the games you got to win first.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's interesting. It does seem like UConn probably wishes it had more tickets sold for this home opener that they've got coming up against Central Connecticut. Just based on the ticket deals that I'm seeing being offered at this time, with all due respect, I think absolutely.
Oh yeah, do that.
They should do everything they can to get as many people in there as possible, particularly students, particularly the community.
It's also usually a challenge Labor Day weekend. Like this game is always on a Thursday, traditionally.
Yeah.
And I think for this exact reason, that people travel, they go away. Is that going to happen?
Maybe that's part
in the
of
SEC, but that's not where we are.
Yeah.
So
Labor Day weekend is maybe part of it, but I do think there's been like there's been it's for the whole season, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it's about the opponents as much as it's the inertia of all, like what you mentioned at the beginning. It's the I'm just so burned. Anyone who really has been caring is feeling like I've just been so burned by all those times where I allowed myself to believe. And it's not like people were believing at a high level going into last fall, right? Let's be really honest about that. It was like let's see what happens year for sure. And then it went better than UConn has done in a really long time. So, and then they've been able to build on that. So that's where we are. And I think, being independent, the schedule's just going to lay some ways, certain years, and some ways other years. Next year, the home slate looks a lot better. So you have that to look forward to. This year, maybe the road games are a little bit more appealing and something that the fans might want to partake in. I know myself, I'll be going to the Syracuse game, the Delaware game, which is just outside of Philly, the Buffalo game as well. Go and I'll maybe probably check out a Bills game that Sunday, the Boston College road game. So you've got some very doable road games. I'm not going to call Buffalo doable. That's far. But Boston, Philly, Syracuse, these are not bad, road trips to go see a decent UConn team, go maybe see an upset, go see, these fan bases that you love to hate. I think that's really the meat of the schedule and an exciting part of it. But yeah, you got to get wins. It's really, really important for UConn football right now to get wins, to state the obvious, like you said. And then, yeah, I do think fan support is going to be something that, if these major conferences are taking a look at UConn, which I'm not sure that it is happening, but even if it is, yeah, you do want the fan support to be there. I will say, my critiques of programs like Temple or Buffalo or my thoughts about their ceiling, I guess, and UConn having a higher one, stems from believing that UConn will support a winner when it's there, whereas Temple and Buffalo can't really sustain a winner. This was true in the old model before transfer portal, NIL. Now that's even worse for those types of teams. They have to be a different type of team, and so is UConn. But I think what's still up in the air for UConn, is are you UMass or are you BYU? In the independent spectrum, are you Liberty, right? And I know there's reasons that BYU and Liberty are the way they are. Don't not at me about those things, please. But are you going to be a serious school as an independent, or are you going to be like we're hanging out here in the G5? So I think that's what remains to be seen. We know that UConn's NIL investment has been strong and significant, definitely at the top of the G5, and to sustain that, of course, requires fan support. That's a whole team situation. You want ticket sales, you want support at road games, so that you have the appearance of that fervor within the fan base. So I do think it is incumbent on UConn fans, if this does turn out to be a good season and we get signs early, right? A good close game against Syracuse, maybe even a win, right? It's not out of the realm of possibility. It's not going to be a crazy, advantage for Syracuse, because they have a lot to replace as well this year. So it's not like, these games are anything where UConn's highly overmatched, I think, until Duke. I think Duke has a lot on the defensive side of the ball, especially. That's just going to be really tough for UConn to handle. I think Syracuse has an advantage, but like you said, pretty good to get them in week 2 and just see what happens. So solid road slate, and anything can happen. That's a lot. That's a great state to be in heading into the season, as opposed to, I hope I can see 4 wins here. So,
I'll take it.
So we feel great. We've also had a couple of chances throughout the preseason to get a look at this team. Graham, what have been some of your thoughts and observations from preseason and camp?
Yeah, it's always cool to check out practice. You always see different guys step up, because everyone kind of rotates in. I think there's probably an idea out there that, like, you always have the 1s and the 2s and then the 3s, and that's not really how practice works. They cycle guys in. Like, if you watched the video the official UConn football account put out today from Joe Fagnano, kind of mic'd up at practice, right? He threw a nice pass over the shoulder, corner of the end zone, to Jackson Harper. Now, I don't think Jackson Harper is a wide receiver 1, right? But you get to see what different guys can do with different lineups. So, someone had asked me in the Store Central board, like, what do you see, like, what are the biggest changes from last year? And interestingly, I don't think there's a lot of change, which I think is a good thing. And I think it's a sign of the culture that they have up there. Like, it's just like, it's the next guy up, right? The practice intensity is always there. You don't need to be psyching dudes up or trying to get people to interact at practice or to do what they need to be doing at practice. Like, it's just like, it's almost like a professional operation, what you would expect from an NFL head coach, former NFL head coach like Jim Mora. I think at quarterback, it's pretty settled. It's going to be Joe Fagnano. I just watch him in practice, and he's just the same Joe. He's cool, calm, collected. This is year 7 in college, right? He has the pocket presence. But I think what's most important is he gets the ball off. It sounds silly, but it's like he knows just how long to stay in the pocket and how long he needs to get rid of that ball. There's no other thinking going on. He's not trying to scramble. He's not trying to make something happen, hero ball. He just knows he steps up and he's like, I'm probably going to get hit, although not in practice because they don't hit. But in a real game, he knows like I'm about to get walloped here, but he still makes the throw. And you got to have that with UConn, especially when you're kind of building your skill positions at receiver, and they're better, but it's not like they got, some NFL speed demons out there that are going to just outrun UAB corners. That's just not true. So, you kind of sometimes need a little extra time to let things develop. He looks good. Running backs, they're good. They're solid. They do not need a whole lot of analysis. You know who's coming back. You got 3 coming back. You add MJ Flowers from Eastern Illinois. Everybody kind of adds their own flavor. I don't think that you see, in the opener against Maryland last year, they kind of gave like even reps. I don't think you're going to see that. But I think you're going to see them try to find opportunities for Flowers and Rosa to get involved some way, somehow. I think they're too good, and Rosa will be healthy. So I think they're just too good to not have that. At receiver, they're pretty well set. Obviously, Skylar Bell is back. You got Shamar Porter. That's a really solid top 2. You add in a bunch of transfers. Chris Parker, Ty Bowman, Romello Murphy. They had a couple guys in Caleb Burton and Naeem Simmons that were in, unfortunately, are now out. So you don't have as much as you thought coming in, but I also mentioned this on the boards the other day. Guys like Harper, been here 3+ years. It's time to, be developed and show out. Like, you're on scholarship. You should be expected to step in if he needs to. I think he can, based on what I've seen in practice. I don't know that it's actually going to happen based on who's in front of him. But, if, God forbid, injury bug hits and like Jackson Harper has to come in, I would feel fine with that. Same with John Nieder, another Connecticut guy that's at receiver. The O-line, big changes. Valentin Senna's gone. Chase Lunt is gone. These are guys that just did not get injured, except for Lunt in the bowl game, his last game, but they just didn't miss time. They were just solid, Mr. Reliable out there. So you've got a few guys to replace there. The interior pretty much comes back with Wes Hoey. You lose Chris Fortin, but you got Kyle Jurgens in there. Ben Morosky's back, although I've been seeing him at tackle. And Carson Cassidy moving inside. He can pretty much play anywhere, honestly. He's been at center. He's been at tackle. He's been at guard. He's fine. All right. You got Notre Dame transfer Ty Chan. I think that rounds out your starting offensive line. Defensively, you have a lot to replace. So when we're talking about, the big changes for this team, that's really what we're talking about, right? And unfortunately, UConn camp is really physical, and there's been some bumps and bruises, nothing major. Jim Morris said the other day he expects most everyone, so that probably leaves 1 or 2 to not be available for the opener against Central. The flip side of that is a lot of these guys are older guys. They're experienced. Ben Smiley, I think this is year 8, if I'm not mistaken, because he's gotten some extra years due to injury and to COVID and being on the UVA team that suffered the fatal shooting on the bus. And I think that was I can't remember the year. I'm not going to say it wrong. So even though they're not really out there as often as we probably would like to hear, when we're breaking in a brand new defense, they're experienced at the FBS level. So not too worried about that. Same with linebacker. You get Taekwon King, you get Brian Parham. Those are really solid guys. But you also have some homegrown developed guys like Omar Diamande, who I love. I think he's going to be great. Amir Renwick comes back, another guy that I like. These are guys that just hit hard And I think that's really important for any linebacker. Although you do need to have those coverage kind of guys too. I see King kind of playing that Jaden McDonald role this year. He will probably lead the team in tackles. That'd be great. If Brian Parham can be second, like Tui Famina-Brown last year, then we're really cooking with gas. In the secondary, Cam Chadwick is back. He's good. He looks pretty solid. Saxon Suchanek, true freshman, I thought has looked pretty good throughout spring ball. Osiris Gilbert, another true freshman. Jim Morris said he's going to be starting on the coaches show this past week. So that's really impressive. He's a true freshman. We don't see that a whole often. I do believe he's a little bit older of a true freshman. Don't quote me on that, but I think he's not 18. So who knows if that's part of it, but he comes from a really, high level Georgia program. He had a lot of offers, a lot of P4 offers, ends up at UConn. The secondary, you lose Ronte Jones, you lose Malik Dixon-Williams, got some guys to replace him like Tyrese Mills, so I thought it looked pretty good. Kamo Latu from Wisconsin by way of Hawaii. He's really impressed. He didn't really get as much kind of preseason hype, but he's looked really good out there. Really confident in him. If he is out there, if it's Malachi McClain, it's the secondary I feel good about. Big thing is going to be the D-line. And as fantastic and as much as we loved guys like Jelani Stafford and Dalmont Cordine, they weren't the most productive. And so I think hopefully you get a little bit more production out of the line. I'm talking more sacks, more TFLs. I would look to someone like Ben Smiley. He's big, he's athletic, he's quick off the jump. I like him. They got some guys to clog up the middle. They really have a lot of versatile guys. It's going to be all about putting it together. And it's hard to look at the defense and practice because they're really not tackling. You're kind of just like, I think they called it thudding the other day, right? You're just kind of like, you're hitting them, but obviously you're not going to be full tackling because you're not going to get hurt in preseason practice. So who knows, are they good at tackling? I don't know. I haven't seen them tackle yet. We got 10 new guys, 11 new guys if you count Gilbert. So I think there's going to be some kinks to work out against Central. I said at the outset, I think that UConn wins it, and I think it's by a few touchdowns, but it might not be the prettiest, just because you're going against a live offense that's not your own. For the first time. You got 11 new dudes out there, 10 new guys out there. That's tough. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I see a scenario where there's some plays where you're like, what? Huh?
We shall see. Yeah, I mean, I have some concerns around the O-line, just with the guys that they're replacing, but of course, lots of faith in Gordon Samus. And then, kind of on the defense, I mean, the defense was really the key for the team last year, and really impressive for defensive coordinator Matt Brock to get that done in that first year. So I'm hoping that in year 2 of the Matt Brock system and era that, he's ready to come in even better with something. It's year 4 under Mora. We'll end the show with, what is your final preseason prediction for wins for this upcoming year?
I'm sticking with 8.
8 regular season.
I said 8. I think when the lines came out, and I'm sticking with it. I think just from so many years of experience, they're going to lose someone that you think maybe they shouldn't have. And I hope it's not one of those teams I listed that should be in the absolute win column. But, I wouldn't feel terrible if they ended up losing at Buffalo or Delaware. I wouldn't feel that bad as long as it was close and competitive.
I have it at 8 as well. I don't want to agree. I'll say I'll say 9. Just they win the bowl game, so we're so we're being
Yeah.
different, just to feel different. But I think we're at great expectations for this upcoming season. Thank you all for watching.